corporate support for a true partnership. I can't tell you how many times we've had clients call us and be like, hey, corporate wants to support an initiative, or the warehouse calls and says, oh my gosh, corporate's shoving this project down our throat. And it's just part of the way that we work, whether you're a 3PL and you've got a continuous improvement team, or maybe you're in operations and there's an IT support team, or maybe you're on the engineering team and trying to help work with the operations. So today, we're going to talk about true partnership. And before we begin, I want to let you know the information discussed in this session represents the views of the individuals and does not constitute legal advice. You should consult with your organization's leadership and legal counsel. So one way that we like to begin is we're going to put a little poll together. So we want to understand a little bit about your situation and on your past, current, or future projects, where is your corporate support? I always get corporate support. I wish I could get corporate support. I never get corporate support. So I'll give you guys just a second here. We're letting other people sign in and register for today's session, and we'll get the results to the poll here in just a little bit. All right. With that being said, I don't think I get to vote, do I? No, I don't get to vote. That being said, I'll close the poll from my view. And let's talk a little bit. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Wowen, and I have 30 plus years in the supply chain industry. I'm based in St. Charles, Illinois, and I am passionate about warehousing, distribution, supply chain. I am a past president for the national chapter of WERC, Warehouse Education Research Council. If you are not a member, I'd highly recommend joining. They've got some really awesome webinars, seminars, periodicals, and then they have their DC Velocity annual benchmark review. That's just a little bit about me. We're going to talk a little bit about our panelists here in a second. One of the things I want to make sure everybody understands is they are muted, and we will use the Q&A or the chat button on the Zoom here to submit any questions. This is an interactive panel, and we want you guys to be able to put that together. So with that being said, let's meet our panelists. So Danielle is a distribution professional with over 10 years of leading high volume operations. Danielle's leadership style is inclusive, energetic, and empathetic. These traits have allowed her to manage change effectively with her teams and driven results. Danielle's background is operations management and information systems. She earned her MBA through Northern Illinois University, shout out to NIU, in 2016. She has managed her teams in high volume pick pack operations, material handling, kitting, value-added services, you got to do that, e-commerce, and sign manufacturing. So Danielle, thank you so much for being here, and appreciate American Hotel Register being sponsored today. In addition, we've got Brandon. He's a results-driven professional supply chain leader with over a decade of experience in developing and implementing solutions. Primarily focused on using analytics to identify opportunities, Brandon leverages his knowledge and leadership style consistently facilitate above average performances from the teams he leads. Brandon's background is in operations information management with a focus on continuous improvement through lean methodologies and systematic solutions. He's worked with warehouse and IT for over 10 years, ranging in roles from ISO compliance, audit, performing 100 audits in North America, installing WMS and voice picking solutions. So welcome, Brandon and Danielle. We're really excited to have you guys here today.
Thank you.
All right, now, yeah, absolutely. So the big thing is, who is American Hotel Register? What role do each of you play and the metrics that you guys use to manage your business? We'll take a look at two projects and understand one from a corporate led, one from a DC led, and the lessons learned from that. And then based on your guys' experience on these two projects, what does it take to succeed? So I think this is a great agenda. And again, for all of you that just signed on, feel free to use the Q&A button, the chat session to submit questions, and we'll get you answers appropriately. So with that being said, Danielle, why don't you tell us a little bit about who is American Hotel Register?
Absolutely. We're a privately owned company. We are owned by the Leahy family, and ever since I've been here, we've just embraced that family culture. It's come down all the way to our warehouse associates. We have over 70,000 products, and really the best way that we've used to describe what products we have is if you cut off the top of a hotel, turn it upside down and shake it, you'll get all of our products. So those small shampoos, the linens, small appliances, that is everything that we have. And then we also have a private label brand, again, some sheets, towels that are American Hotel private label. And in addition to serving all of the hotels, we have healthcare. We can service hospitals, government, colleges, and then we also are the largest, one of the largest funeral urn suppliers in North America. We also do engraving of those funeral urns on site. One of our guiding principles is positive outcomes for our customers. And as we talk through these projects today, you'll see that we are always looking for that positive outcome for each of our customers.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm an American Hotel Register customer. I've been traveling for all of my years, and I know when I walked your facility for the first time, I saw a lot of products that I've used. My wife's favorite, though, she really likes the robes. So Brandon, Danielle, we might need to talk about me able to get some robes for her, okay?
Perfect.
All right. So Danielle, now that we understand a little bit about American Hotel, tell us a little bit about the role you play there, and then specifically kind of what metrics you use to manage your operation.
Absolutely. So I'm the warehouse manager here at the Vernon Hills facility. I manage the day-to-day operations in the DC, so pick, pack, ship, receive. We also have kitting here, so that is more of our room in a box. And what we do is we take that separation of product away from the customer, and we do that on site here. And so then when the customer receives that product, they just have to put a box in a room rather than going through each sheet and making sure that it gets to the right place. So we'll do a cost analysis on that. We'll execute that project and then make sure that the customer is satisfied on that. We also have just done our e-commerce in-house. So we have a site called abundle.com. So your wife can check that out for some of those robes, because we can ship to consumers based off of that. And so we fulfill those orders at our Vernon Hills facility. I'm also responsible for sign manufacturing. So we do urn engraving. We can do digital printing. We make those hotel signs, some of the evacuation plans, really any sign that you see in a hotel, we have that capability to make. And then we also have a small embroidery operation. So if we need to embroider robes, slippers, towels, we can do that with the customer logo, or whatever the customer would like to see on that robe. And then again, we do pricing and creation of new products. In terms of new products, something that we did for COVID is we've done some of those plexiglass shields. We've been manufacturing those on site. And then one thing I didn't mention is we are about 250,000 square feet, and we have 24 employees right now with the kind of post-COVID, but pre-COVID, we are about 50 to 70 employees.
Okay, and then you said that you're in the Vernon Hills facility. How many sites are in the network?
We have 5 sites.
Okay, and Vernon Hills is the largest of the 5, or how does it play in the 5?
We have the largest amount of SKUs, but in terms of square footage, we're about mid-grade. We are right next door to our corporate facility, so there's a little bit more of that value add through here, but in terms of size, our largest DCs are on the coasts.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for sharing. All right, Brandon. Now we've heard a little bit about Danielle and her role on the operations side. Let's learn a little bit from you, what role you play, and then what's the metric of success for you in your organization?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I am the manager of corporate logistics, and my team is primarily in charge with the support, testing and maintenance, and the overall functionality of the supply chain systems that we use on a day-to-day basis. So the warehouse management system, transportation management system, our voice picking software, slotting software, manifesting software, and appointment scheduling are some of the systems that we use. And so my team is charged with maintaining those. In addition, we're always looking for enhancements, whether that's a physical process enhancements, doing some sort of time study, or systematic enhancements. My team will get involved and we'll work on those enhancements with the warehouse and the necessary teams. We'll handle any sort of day-to-day error resolution between the systems, as well as documentation as well. We will document all our systems through SOPs and other sort of employee handbooks or guides that we can provide. We also are charged with formation of new KPIs, as well as identifying reporting that we can send out on daily, weekly, and monthly basis, whatever it may be. And then we also maintain a relationship with our 3PLs as well. So the team has a little bit of their hands in everything. And so some of our metrics of success are, from a system standpoint, we look at system downtime. And luckily with our systems, they are set to a point where they generally don't go down, but a piece of the system may go down. So server might go down and then everything gets moved over to another server to handle the load. So we'll investigate those type of issues, as well as any errors between the systems, and in addition, physical errors as well. So if we're constantly mispicking an item or misreceiving an item or having adjustments that we're not anticipating, we'll get involved to try and figure out what's causing that. Is it a system issue or a physical issue? And try and work with the necessary departments there. And overall, my team is tasked with decreasing costs while increasing productivity through physical or systematic enhancements.
So decrease cost, increase system capability. You had talked about enhancements. So 5 sites, how do they, actually feed in the request to you? And then how do you prioritize that with your team, Brandon?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So each team will funnel their requests up through their shift managers or the warehouse manager. And then we have calls every Thursday with the DC managers. And if anything comes up, they will funnel that to myself and my team. We also have a good relationship with the individuals out on the floor. So if somebody has a question, they know they can come direct to us. They don't have to worry about, going through any sort of formal submission process. And if there is something that does need to be, discussed and approved, my team will take on that role of documenting it and getting the necessary departments involved to discuss whether or not it's something we should move forward with.
That's pretty cool. I'm not sure. I know everybody that has their corporate team and their ops team do a weekly call on Thursday. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing. All right. So we've got a little bit here, right? So we've got American Hotel Register. We've got the operations side from Danielle with her metrics. We've got Brandon from corporate and his metrics. Let's see where the rubber hits the road, right? So we're going to talk about 2 projects. This first one's a corporate-led WMS project. So Brandon, tell us a little bit about this.
So American Hotel had been on an older green screen-based system, WMS, for about 15 years. And there really hadn't been any discussions of getting a new one. It really wasn't on the roadmap. And about 2013, a company had approached us that said, hey, we have a new WMS that we would like to partner with you on. Are you interested? And so we started going through the vetting process and realized that this is something we should probably really seriously take a look at, and maybe it's something that we need to do. And so what was interesting about this is obviously the warehouses were not aware this was anything we were even discussing, because it really did come out of the blue. And once we decided that this was a project that is something that looked viable and worthwhile, we were given a timeline of basically 24 months to get it installed, designed and tested, and go live. So it was definitely a tight timeline, and because there was no real prior work done to this, and it just kind of came out of the blue, one of the first things we started discussing was, how are we going to communicate this with the teams? How are we going to keep them engaged? And so the first thing we did was come up with a management team of what associates need to be involved. And so that was primarily made of the shift managers and the warehouse managers, so that they were always going to be involved in all of our communication. But one of the main things we wanted to do was get a level below them and identify change champions for this project. And so before we even had much of an idea of what the scope of the project was going to be, and much of a layout of it and a plan, we wanted to identify these change champions. And so we had brought them to corporate. We had asked the warehouse managers to come up with who they think should be a part of this team. And we had brought them up to corporate for several days, and we actually had some senior managers on the supply chain get involved with that. So it was team building based, which is really the reason we had them up here. We did a Who Moved My Cheese presentation, some loaded questions, some icebreaker type games. but it was really based around team building and understanding what those associates are looking for and what we're expecting out of them. And Danielle, how do you think that went when we brought those individuals up to corporate?
I think that part was key, because I think, everybody knows you get that phone call, you're going to get a project that's driven by corporate, and you're like, oh boy, now corporate's going to press this button and I'm going to be held responsible to make sure we get these orders out on time, that they're accurate. But I think what was nice about it is with the change champions, we weren't shouldering all of that responsibility. We were really getting that ground floor in with corporate, in with the people that were making the change. And it wasn't all coming directly from me or my shift managers. It was the associates that we knew would be open-minded would go into this group, and then they would be the ones that are advocating for us. So then it just didn't seem like corporate calls me, now it's just all going downhill and I'm bringing all of this change in. Brandon and his team really got in front of our teams very early, and so that we were able to really move through this change together rather than it being very kind of one-sided and one-dimensional.
Excellent.
Sounds like a good mixture there, because I think, nobody loves change, and let alone a brand new WMS. Nobody asked me my input on how I think it should work. So now you're taking the team, making them empowered to help design the optimum solution and make them part of it. So sounds like you guys are on the right track. How did we finish out here, Brandon?
So in addition to having those change champions, we wanted them to be involved in as many aspects of the project as possible. So as we were designing our test scenarios, very simply from my standpoint, I know we need to receive, put away, pack, pick, and ship. But there's so many other things that happen on a day-to-day basis. And so we went out and charged the management team and the change champions with discussing with the floor associates, what else, what other curveballs, what other things do we need to validate and verify with this new system? What are we struggling with today that we can make better? And the same thing with the documentation. So coming from that, the change champions had more or less identified that our current SOP structure really wasn't ideal, didn't necessarily help all that much with onboarding new associates. So during this project, we also revamped our SOPs. We came up with a new format and a new SOP structure as well. So that was driven by the change champions, which was a great time to make these changes and get them involved.
And then the new SOPs was the foundation for the acceptance testing and end user training, right?
Correct. And so we made sure that all the feedback we received, because if anybody has ever tried to identify the perfect SOP format, it doesn't exist. And so we constantly were tweaking it and getting feedback from the associates.
Excellent, excellent.
And once again, just with engagement, really trying to keep the associates aware of how we're creating this brand new system for them, but we wanted them to be aware. So we did virtual demonstrations well before the system was even functional. So we just had screenshots and we were showing them, hey, this is what it's going to look like on your RF gun. Here's the screens you're going to see very early on, because we wanted everyone to be comfortable with what they were going to see and made sure that every step along the way, we could provide some information to the teams that we were going to do that and keep them engaged.
Very nice.
We also did a handbook. So at each go live, we gave the associates a handbook that's like, hey, here's the things you're going to need to know. Here's some tips. Here's some tricks. Here's some guidelines of what's about to happen. And we also gave them some contact information as well for who to reach out to when they encountered something that they weren't expecting. And then with any project, obviously go live and obtain feedback. So anybody who's done a major project, whether it's a WMS or any other type of large scale project, there's going to be issues after go live. It does not go as smooth as you would like. And so for us, it took about 4 months to get Vernon Hill stable after we went live. And during those 4 months, myself and my team, we were out there. We had brought in the change champions and other warehouse managers as well to be a part of that go live. So it was a real team effort, and we were out there on the floor. We kind of had a command center that we had created, and we were just working side by side with the associates out there, going on picks, doing receipts, understanding where the issues were, so we could send that information back to the programmers and try and get those changes done as soon as possible. And so it was obviously a very big project, but that obtaining feedback from the associates ended up being one of the best parts of the whole project, because we were never going to be at a point where we had tested every scenario and everything was going to be great. We just kind of had to rip the Band-Aid off, and obtaining that feedback is really what helped us stabilize and move on to subsequent rollouts.
Now, Danielle, you had said earlier that your Vernon Hills is one of 5 sites. How big was the Change Champion team, and was each site represented?
Yes, every site was represented, and there were, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was about 2 people per building
Correct.
that
Very
were
cool.
part of that. So, but everyone was represented, and like Brandon mentioned, that was our core team that was traveling throughout the implementation. So every implementation that we had, that team would be moving around with the implementation team.
That's great. That's great. So you weren't first. That was fun, I'm sure.
It was thrilling. I will tell you that. But I think what was nice about it is that Brandon and his team were here, so it really didn't feel again like that. Okay, we did what we need to do. You guys go ahead and figure it out. There was a lot of, this is what's going wrong. Can we get this fixed right now? Rather than more of a let me call this person and try to get this done.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So we've heard about an operations-led team doing the WMS, and I'm sorry, we heard about a corporate-led initiative, the WMS, and how it worked with the team. What about when the DC or the operations has a project? Let's hear from that side of it.
Sure. So UPS by order was a project that we had come up with in the DC. So it was an idea of right now, or previously we were picking orders based on the zone. So if it was an aisle B, we were picking it that way, and then the customer would get multiple packages. But UPS by order would be consolidating that into one order. And so it would be great freight savings and a great customer experience if we could get it done. We were doing it manually where we could, but we really wanted this to be systematically driven. And so we created ROI, and we were able to present this to the senior team due to the amount of resources that we needed. So there was going to be a big systematic change. And so it wasn't just something that we could do in-house. So we were able to present that and make sure that corporate understood what exactly was going on and what needed to be done. It was a physical process change for the DC. Obviously, it was changing how we picked orders. And it was how we ship orders also. So again, it was a lot on both the corporate side and the DC side. But what was nice is this one was our idea, so we didn't get that phone call. We got to make the phone call this time.
And to that point, when you guys developed the ROI, did you guys do that on your own, or did you get support from corporate to build the ROI and make the presentation?
We got support from corporate on that one.
Okay. And what was the ROI? Was it less than 24 months, 18 months? Do you recall?
It was very substantial, which is why this got so much press within American Hotel at corporate. It was a 7-figure return in the first 12 months.
Nice.
So the actual ROI was honestly days to achieve, which just tells you what an opportunity this was from a freight savings standpoint.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'm sorry, Danielle. So you guys
No,
developed the ROI. You knew it was going to require systems changes because everything does. And then there's some physical processes that need to change as well. So we just developed this SOP. We just went live with the WMS, and now we got to redo all that, right?
Yep, exactly. So we did, again, we identified a testing team, because since it was going to make changes in terms of the way we pick, the way we ship, we wanted to make sure that, again, the people that are doing it every day have their input and their concerns right away. The other piece was we had to understand from a warehouse manager perspective, this was going to increase labor because it took more time to pick. And then it's also going to increase our packaging, because we are going to be consolidating things into one box rather than sending it out in vendor boxes. But it's going to reduce that freight. And then it's also going to be customer satisfaction. No one wants to receive 10 separate cases of coffee if they could receive it all in one box. So again, communication's key, making sure that we're communicating every step of the way with our team. And then having that ground level team again, we were able to advocate for that new process, not just from my level, but also all the associates being able to discuss those benefits. We did have to purchase equipment for this, so we do it more of a cart pick style. So we had to design those carts, make sure that we worked with Brandon and his team to design a cart that made sense. One thing is the Vernon Hills facility is very narrow aisle, while the rest of them are wide aisle. So we wanted something that would fit all of our warehouses rather than having one special for Vernon Hills and then the other DCs have something different.
Understood completely. I think, very narrow aisle and wide aisle, right? It has a huge impact on space and your productivity labor. So definitely understand that. All right. So talk to us a little bit about the go live and the postmortem here on this project.
Perfect. So we went live. We were excited to go live, and then we got way more than we had anticipated. It was actually going very well from a corporate perspective because they liked seeing everything come through, but it was a little overwhelming from a DC perspective, and we needed to obtain a lot of feedback because one thing that we noticed was everything was going through this consolidation process. So there were items that didn't make sense. There were 70-pound items that were going to be consolidated with 20-pound items. So you don't need a 90-pound package. So some of these things we needed to take off of this consolidation pick right away. And so we were able to work with Brandon and his team to develop a list of saying, let's get this product off so that we could be more successful and not have to kind of do this a little bit more labor intensive process for something that wasn't even going to make sense in the very end. Brandon, anything more to add? Oh, go ahead, Michael.
No. Brandon, what do you have to add to that?
No, it was almost shocking how well it was working right away, to Danielle's point, that just the amount of volume that was all of a sudden going through this new process. And so we kind of went through, myself and the team, kind of a 2.0 and a 3.0 version of this fairly quickly afterwards, is how can we tweak it and streamline it and create these new rules that'll make it so that the DC isn't just getting completely inundated with this new type of picking, and how can we streamline it for them. So we expected probably a little bit more of a honeymoon period that we were anticipating, and it went by pretty quick. So we had to be very responsive to it.
So I appreciate that. I mean, so we've heard both a WMS corporate-led initiative, and now we've heard a DC-led initiative. But what's the key takeaway that I just heard is I can't tell you how many companies come to us and they go, our data is not good, or we're worried about this, or we're worried about that. You guys hey, we did the best we could. We jumped in and we knew, right, as it's going, we're going to make some changes. It's not going to be 100%, but let's, get the juice worth the squeeze and then make the ramifications or the fine tunement afterwards. So I give you guys a lot of credit for jumping in both feet. So let's talk about this, right? So we've got, out there corporate initiative projects that the operations team has to do, or ops wants to do a project, needs corporate, support to get it to happen. Let's talk a little bit about some of what does it take to be successful? What are some of those lessons learned that you guys, went through? So talk to us a little bit about this first one, buy-in from all parties from the beginning. So talk to us about that.
So it sounds very obvious, you got to get buy-in, top down, but also bottom up. But for us, the way we really identified it is you're going to get that question almost right away is why. We've always done it this way. Why does something need to change? And that's where obviously getting the senior support is very beneficial, because you want the resources, and you want everyone to understand how impactful this is to the company. But you also need those associates on the floor to advocate for you and be out there and understand that this is beneficial, and we're doing it because we want to not only make our company stronger and better, but we want to take care of our customers. And so you need to kind of get rid of that stigma that, yeah, we're changing it, but it's not change just for change's sake. It's change because this is something that is extremely beneficial and something that is going to help the company in the long run.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys have done a good job with your team and letting people have a voice and have empowerment about the changes. So, I think your culture kind of talks to that a little bit. So that's pretty cool. Anything you want to add on that, Danielle?
No, I think again, it's just making sure that it was from the beginning. Making sure that even if it seems insignificant, it's significant enough to bring people in. Because I think from an operations perspective, there's a lot of things that go on where we go, well, no one asked the DC's perspective on that. And so then we're trying to pick up the pieces where if you just let us know in the very beginning, again, it might seem insignificant, but it actually could help you in the long run.
Excellent. I don't even know how to say that word. Exaltively design a pre-mortem. Like what? That's got to be a Brandonism right there. What is that?
It is 100%. So one of those things that we started identifying, everyone does a postmortem just to see what went well, what didn't go well in a project. So it sets yourself up for success on the next one. But something that we've recently come to start thinking about is this concept of a pre-mortem, where what is going to stump us on this project? Where are we going to fail? What is not going to go well? And try to manage around that before you even get to that point. And so exhaustively design a pre-mortem is really thinking about where you have potential to fail and what you can do about it to try and head off some of that failure. You may not be able to completely stop it, but you may put yourself in a better chance to succeed. And so identifying those failure points, get all the other departments involved. Those change champions were extremely beneficial for us in telling us all the different things they experience on a daily basis. And then in doing that, you'll start to identify some of these invisible rules that exist in your company that, oh, we can't do that just because, oh, that department always does it, or that individual has to do it this way, and there's really no way around it. Really trying to identify what those are and say, why do we need those? Is there a way to do something better? And what's interesting is you might end up with this concept of a moonshot, which is doing something that is so above and beyond what you're currently doing that may be appropriate for this project right now. And so for us, while we were doing the WMS, our moonshot was really voice picking. We did our voice picking at the exact same time as the WMS. So prior to this, we were always just picking on RF and everything was fine. And we took the opportunity of a new WMS to say, why don't we throw in a voice picking system as well? So that was our moonshot, and it worked, and it was great, and we were able to do it at the same time. And for us, it worked out, and there may be times where it doesn't work out, and that's perfectly okay, but at least you're planning for something that is better than where you're currently at. There's no point in installing a brand new system or doing a whole new process if you're just going to recreate what exists today. And so those moonshots came out of a lot of discussion with the teams as we were doing these project planning meetings.
I'm learning like new vernacular, right? Invisible rules, moonshots. I mean, this is awesome stuff. Like, I mean, the fact that you even call it an invisible rule. Why? Well, because, does it have to be that way? I guess not. It's just always been like that, right? So just these invisible rules. That's awesome. And then the moonshot. Danielle, did you guys have a moonshot on your UPS by order?
I'm trying to think. Brandon, would you call anything out of that a moonshot?
Originally, we had planned that we were just going to pick to carts and almost like totes. That was the original plan. And the moonshot, which is still somewhat in the works, is to create or identify the appropriate size box ahead of time and pass that information through to the voice picking system. So the associate, as they set up their assignment, will hear what size boxes they need ahead of time. And we're still working on that. It was a great idea from the team. Instead of just picking the totes and then repacking at the shipping station, we wanted them to pick directly into the shipping box and it just goes. So
is that on TJ's list? Cartonization somewhere on there?
100% right there.
Excellent. All right. What's the next point here?
So carefully choosing those team members. So I think one thing that we have learned to do well is really taking value out of everyone on our team, because really what you might look for is, oh, I want that subject matter expert. I want that person that's open-minded, that comes up with new ideas. That's going to be my project team. That's who's going to help me implement this new thing. But what you also have to look for is people with that beginner's mind. So somebody with a beginner's mind is, let's say they work exclusively in receiving and you have a new picking process. Move that person over to that new picking process and get their perspective on it. They might see something that doesn't make sense. They might call something out that might be that kind of tribal knowledge of, oh, I know that I put this label here and this is the way it goes. They might call that out of like, I don't understand this. I don't see why you do this, because they're completely new to this process. So definitely add somebody or a couple people with that beginner's mind. And then also you really want that veteran genius. Those are the people that say, we've always done it this way. We don't need this new system. My way is better, because they're going to help you with that pre-mortem. They're going to be identifying those failure points for you. They're going to be telling you what the concerns are the second that you start communicating. And so it's really finding value in what they bring to the table, but then also including all of these different groups will get that engagement from your entire team rather than just those people that are gung-ho for your project and are really excited for the change, because you really need that full spectrum.
That's interesting that you say that. It just yesterday we were in a facility and they basically said, hey, we took our old building, we just blew it up a little bigger, made it a new building. Nobody said, here's a white sheet of paper, what would you do differently and why? And so sometimes taking the data and the best practices and putting those together and thinking about solving a problem. So the way you build the team and having different thought processes, part of it. I love it. All right, what about this feedback loop and communication?
I think part of it is, again, making sure that you have some sort of feedback loop. So using the metrics that we have in the buildings and giving that back to the team of, with the UPS by order, we were saving shipping costs. So being able to communicate that back, but also making sure that, are you going to do this on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, so that the team is expecting that? So every distribution center at American Hotel has a monthly town hall where we really download all of that information. And so what we do is make sure we have a consistent template so that our associates know exactly where we're at from a metrics perspective. And so we're able to really bring in some of these project wins into those town halls. And so they know every month they will get that update.
Well, no, that's an important part, because a lot of times when you start a project with ops and corp sponsorship, like what is the benchmark that you're currently at? You put a business plan together, we're going to achieve this ROI. What's the mechanism to give the feedback? We accomplished the ROI, we exceeded the ROI, we're behind the ROI. So the fact that you have this communication and you have that loop in place, that's huge, because everybody wants to know, right? Did I have an impact on the business? Did we achieve the goals that we set out for?
And what we found is it's extremely important to never miss that frequency. So that expectation, if it's going to come out weekly, it comes out weekly. If it's monthly, it comes out monthly. Because the last thing we want to do is have those warehouse managers have their monthly town hall and not be able to provide the team with the information that we told them they would have.
Right. Very cool. So who's going to take the identify measurements for success here?
So that's another one. Obviously, my team is always heavily involved with the data for supply chain, but it was very important to discuss with any of these projects is, what are the KPIs that we measure today? Are they beneficial? Do we keep them? That's great. Are there any new ones that we need to look at? Or as we were implementing the new WMS, we had so many more data points than we had previously. So we were almost had that blank sheet of, we can create new metrics here that we've never had before. What is beneficial? What would you like to see and have at your fingertips? And what was interesting is we were able to get some metrics directly out of the system that we could provide the DCs. Hey, this is something you can have at your fingertips all day, every day. You can just refresh the data and see where you're at. And then here's these other ones that are going to be daily or weekly, depending on how we access it. So we had talked about KPIs pretty much throughout every step of the process. And they were changing, from the very beginning. We said, hey, these are the ones we want to measure. Let's recreate what we have today and see what we can build on. And then by the time we get to the end, they don't look anything like what our first pass of the metrics were. So we never were satisfied with the data that we had. We always wanted to keep pushing it. And then identify, are there any other intangibles that are going to come out of these measurements of success? It may not be something you can precisely measure, but it's something you need to be aware of that may be impacted, whether positively or negatively from this project.
how do you identify intangibles, or is it just you capture them as a benefit or a side product of the project?
Yeah, it tend to be more of a side product, something as
Okay.
simple as these carts that we had come up with for the UPS by orders, a new piece of equipment in the building. What is their wear and tear? How are they impacting our current forklifts? Are we finding that, it's actually slowing down picking as people are trying to get around them? Obviously in Danielle's building, very narrow aisle, but in the wide aisle buildings, we had measured it and wanted to make sure that people can get around these carts if it was in the aisle. But things like that you don't necessarily anticipate and are trying to identify, is that causing some issues, and do we need to figure out a new way to measure these topics and issues that we're encountering?
It's very interesting that you should say that, Brandon. We're going to get to it real quick. Just for those that are on the webinar, we do have a Q&A session right now. So you can use your Q&A button at the top. We do have a couple of chat messages here that I'm going to get to, but I'm gonna go right off the top here, right? So thinking about the fact that you've got operations, you got corporate, you guys talked about 2 projects, you talked about lessons learned. Is there any secret sauce to having these projects be successful? Anything there in the American Hotel family?
It definitely helps if the manager of corporate logistics and the warehouse manager of Vernon Hills are married.
So Danielle and you are married?
That's very true.
And
Oh,
so
I would
you
say
were
that
married
helps.
before or after the projects?
Before and still married after a WMS implementation.
That's some secret sauce for sure. All right, on the chat bar, we've got a great question. Do you have any challenges with cart picking using the same cart style with very narrow aisle versus narrow aisle? So for those of you that don't know, very narrow aisle is about 5.5, 6 foot, where a standard or a narrow aisle is about 9.5, 10, and then wide aisle is more than 12 feet. So do you guys have any challenges with that? And can a picker pass another cart in the very narrow aisle to prevent bottlenecks?
No, so I would say that would probably be one of our biggest challenges is a picker can, one person in that area at one time, no one can pass through. We've also found that you really have to think about how you're picking, because you can't go around the cart. And so you really have to watch ergonomically how you're picking, and then also paying attention to, I have this cart, so it's not like I can move around it. And so we use this platform and use the platform in order to pick. But I would say we have seen that it's a lot easier to cart pick, but it's a lot easier to pick in a very narrow aisle facility or a very wide aisle facility versus the very narrow aisle.
Sounds like a sliding problem, Brandon. You should be able to figure that out.
So it's always on our list. And we were fortunate enough when we were looking at the carts, we only had to deal with one very narrow aisle, and the rest of our buildings are wide aisle. So when we had measured it, we obviously wanted to make sure it fit in the narrow aisle, but also for the wide aisle that there was going to be that space for another picker to get around it, and it does work. So there would not be possible in a narrow aisle facility, but in a wide aisle you can definitely get around it. And the carts we went with were originally designed to be used in kind of a chain type fashion, where they would be driven around 3 or 4 carts hooked up. And we ended up actually modifying the carts a little bit. We had them designed so that they were not supposed to be used like that, or be towed. In essence, we got rid of that functionality and that feature so that it would really fit within our aisles and give our associates the most room that they can to complete their picks.
Excellent. I know the other option too is doing an STA, whether you go to double deep or maybe even 3 deep pushback. You guys can widen those aisles to 9 foot and still get the same storage out of there. So now that you've got the Optricity OptiSlot software, maybe do an STA at Vernon Hills and look at some alternative layouts for them for sure. All right. Any other questions from the group? Dave, can you share with us the poll? What percentage with our corporate projects? Let's see if we can get the poll up. So I always get corporate support, 83%. I wish I could get corporate support, 17%. I never get corporate support, 0. So it looks like, you know, our topic today is relevant. A lot of people are actually, you know, getting the support from corporate, whether they like it or not. And it's really about how corporate and operations work together. So Danielle and Brandon, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day. We appreciate you guys sharing your story, how you guys work well together. If you guys are interested in learning more, please reach out to Alpine. We'll get you in connection with Danielle and Brandon. And don't forget, next month, April 21st, Ron Rafey is going to talk about 50 ways to leave your facility. So if you're planning to move into a brownfield or a greenfield, we're going to get you covered on that topic. So with that being said, on the behalf of everybody here at Alpine, American Hotel Register, stay safe, stay healthy, and have an amazing day. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.